ló lè sọ wípé Sarah yóò bímọ.
And in chapter 21, after the birth of Isaac, Abraham sent away Hagar and Ishmael.
Ní orí kọkànlélógún yìí náà nígbà tí Sarah bí ọmọ, Abrahamu lé Agari àti ọmọ rẹ̀ jáde, Ismaili.
In the latter part of chapter 21, Abimelech came to Abraham that they should enter into a treaty because Abraham was becoming large and wealthy.
Ní apá tó gbẹ̀yìn ní orí kọkànlélógún níbẹ̀ ni Abimeleki ti tọ̀ Isaki wá nítorí pé Isaki ń gbilẹ̀ sí ó sì ń dúnkokò
Came to Abraham.
ó bámu wá wípé kí àwọn jọ wọnú àdéhùn nítorí pé ó rí pé Abraham ń gbilẹ̀ sí.
Because Abraham was proven to become more rich, more wealthier than them in the land.
Nítorí pé Abraham ń lọ́rọ̀, ó ń lọ́lá jù wọ́n lọ ní ilẹ̀ náà.
And so it was after this that 22 opened that sometime later God tested Abraham.
Èyí ló sì wá mú kí orí kejìlélógún bẹ̀rẹ̀ pẹ̀lú ó sì ṣe lẹ́yìn nǹkan wọ̀nyí.
Because the height of the need of Abraham was met in chapter 21.
Nítorí pé ohun tó jẹ́ àìní Abraham tó ga jùlọ òun ni a bá pàdé ní orí kọkànlélógún.
Abraham was a man that lacked nothing except a son, and that need was met in chapter 21 of Genesis.
Abraham ní ohun gbogbo ṣùgbọ́n ohun tó ṣaláìní náà ni ọmọ. Nínú orí kọkànlélógún yìí ni a sì ti bá àìní yẹn pàdé.
And so Abraham also had his fair share of learning to trust God for all he needed, most especially a child.
Abrahamu náà nípìn nínú kí ènìyàn máa gbẹ́kẹ̀lé Ọlọ́run ní àkókò tí ó bá nílò nǹkan, ní pàtàkì jùlọ ọmọ.
It got to a time that he was no longer asking God for what to eat and what to drink because God already settled that.
Ó dé ìpele kan tó jẹ́ pé kò nílò láti máa béèrè ohun tí yóò jẹ àbí ohun tí yóò mu nítorí pé Ọlọ́run ti yanjú rẹ̀.
Some of us are also at that level that we don't need to beg God for what to eat and drink because he has taken us to that height that we are not doubting him because provision will come.
Àwọn kọ̀ọ̀kan nu wa náà sì ti dé ìpele wípé a ò nílò láti ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ máa bẹ̀bẹ̀ pé kí la ó jẹ kí la ó mu nítorí pé Ọlọ́run ti ṣe é débi pé ó ń pèsè fún wa.
And we also have some that will be in the category of Abraham. Yes, he has done all, but there is still one thing that we are learning to trust him for, that is able to do it.
Bẹ́ẹ̀ náà ni a sì ní àwọn tó wà ní ìpele irú ti Abrahamu yìí pé Ọlọ́run ti ṣe ohun gbogbo ṣùgbọ́n ó kù nǹkan kan tí a fẹ́ kí Ọlọ́run ṣe fún wa.
And we also have those that God have actually answered like Abraham, and at this level it seems there is nothing to learn to trust God about again.
A sì ní àwọn mìíràn tó jẹ́ wípé wọ́n wà ní ìpele pé Ọlọ́run ti ṣe ohun gbogbo fún wọn tó bẹ́ẹ̀ gẹ́ tí wọn ò nílò pé wọ́n gbẹ́kẹ̀lé Ọlọ́run fún nǹkan kan.
But the Lord came to Abraham in chapter 22.
Ṣùgbọ́n Ọlọ́run tọ̀ Abraham wá ní orí kejìlélógún.
And he said, take your son, your only son, whom you love.
Ó ní mú ọmọ rẹ kan ṣoṣo tó fẹ́ràn.
God was very specific about what he wanted.
Ọlọ́run ó sọ ní gbòógì ohun tó fẹ́.
God was very direct about what he wanted Abraham to offer to him.
Ọlọ́run ò máa lọ sí yín lọ sọ́hún, ó sọ tààrà ohun tó fẹ́ kí Abraham ṣe.
He said, your son.
Ó ní ọmọ rẹ.
Meaning if he had a daughter, God was not saying your daughter.
Ó fi hàn pé tó bá ní ọmọbìnrin Ọlọ́run ò sọ pé kó mú ọmọbìnrin.
He said your only son.
Ó ní ọmọ rẹ kan ṣoṣo.
Meaning if he had other sons, God is saying, I don't reckon with them. I reckon with only one.
Ó túmọ̀ sí pé tó bá ní ọmọkùnrin púpọ̀, Ọlọ́run kò sọ pé gbogbo wọn ṣùgbọ́n ọmọ kan ló fẹ́ láàrin wọn.
And it's possible, humanly speaking, you might be thinking, okay, the son, Ishmael is also a son.
Ó lè máa ronú pé Ismaili náà ọmọ ni,
But God
ọmọkùnrin
said,
ni.
whom you love.
Ṣùgbọ́n Ọlọ́run wá fi kún pé èyí tí ó fẹ́ràn.
Whom you love.
Èyí tí ó fẹ́ràn.
Isaac.
Isaki.
He mentioned his name.
Ó dárúkọ
Your
rẹ̀.
son whom you love, Isaac.
Ọmọ rẹ tí ó fẹ́ràn, Isaki.
Go to the region of Moriah, sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on the mount. I will show you.
Ó ní kó lọ sórí òkè Moria kó sì lọ síbẹ̀ láti fi ṣe ẹbọ sísun.
You know, we find it easy to give God what we desire and find it hard to give him what he asks for specifically.
Ó máa ń tẹ́ wa lọ́rùn láti fún Ọlọ́run ní ohun tí a bá fẹ́ ṣùgbọ́n ó máa ń ṣòro láti fún ní ohun tóun fúnra rẹ̀ bá béèrè gan.
So many times God would have asked of us to give this, and we tend to say no, it cannot be God that is speaking.
Nígbà mìíràn Ọlọ́run ti lè bá wa sọ̀rọ̀ pé ká fún òun ní nǹkan kan a wá wò pé kò gbọ́dọ̀ jẹ́ Ọlọ́run ló ń sọ eléyìí.
It cannot be God.
Kò lè jẹ́ Ọlọ́run.
Orí mi kọ́.
I reject it.
It cannot be God.
Kò lè jẹ́ Ọlọ́run.
It happens to pastors too.
Ó máa ń ṣẹlẹ̀ sí àwọn oníwàásù náà.
When God will say leave your comfort zone and go to a place
Tí Ọlọ́run
that
yóò
is
sọ
not
fún wa pé
comfortable.
ká lọ kúrò ní ibi tí ó rọni lọ́rùn ká sì lọ síbi tí kò rọrùn tó.
And you say that it cannot be God, this must be a demon.
Pé eléyìí ò lè jẹ́ Ọlọ́run ṣùgbọ́n ẹ̀mí èṣù ni.
But when the Lord is speaking, if you are his child, you will know it is he that is
Tí
speaking.
Ọlọ́run bá ń sọ̀rọ̀ tí a bá jẹ́ ọmọ rẹ̀ nítòótọ́ a ó mọ̀
And
pé
the Bible said early the next morning, Abraham got up, took the donkey, took the boy, took wood and fire, and off he went.
pé ní òwúrọ̀ ọjọ́ kejì Ábúráhámù di igi ó sì mú ọmọ rẹ̀ kan ṣoṣo ó sì ń lọ.
And he set out for the place God has told him about.
Ó sì tẹ̀ sí ọ̀nà ibi tí Ọlọ́run sọ fún
You
un.
will discover that Abraham did not struggle about setting out.
A ó rí i pé Ábúráhámù ò jìjàgùdù pẹ̀lú lílọ.
Because from experience in Genesis 12, he already understood when God said, go to a place I will show to you. He needed not have any crisis because he knows that the Lord will direct his path.
Nítorí pé ó ti ní ìrírí yìí tẹ́lẹ̀ nínú orí kejìlá nípa pé jáde lọ sí ibi tí èmi ò fi hàn ọ́ kò jẹ́ kí eléyìí nira fún un ó sì lọ nítòótọ́.
But we will know that it will not be an easy thing for the request of God at this point to take your only son and go sacrifice.
Ṣùgbọ́n a mọ̀ wípé kì í ṣe ohun tó rọrùn pẹ̀lú ohun tí Ọlọ́run béèrè ní àkókò yìí pé kó mú ọmọ rẹ̀ láti fi ṣẹbọ.
But yet he took the boy and he went off.
Ṣùgbọ́n síbẹ̀ ó mú ọmọ
And on
yìí
the
wọ́n sì
third
lọ.
day he looked up and he saw the place in the distance.
Ní ọjọ́ kẹta ó wò ọ̀kan orí ibi tí Ọlọ́run fi
And he
mọ̀.
said to his servants, stay here.
Ó wá sọ fún àwọn ìránṣẹ́ rẹ̀ kí wọ́n dúró síbí.
Myself and the boy will go further and offer the
Pé
sacrifice.
èmi àti ọmọ yìí a ó lọ síwájú láti lọ ṣe
And the
ìrúbọ
Bible
náà.
said after he left with Isaac,
Bíbélì sọ pé lẹ́yìn tí ó ń lọ pẹ̀lú
Isaac asked the father, this is the fire, this is the wood, where is the sacrifice?
Ísáàkì béèrè lọ́wọ́ bàbá rẹ̀ pé igi nìyí bẹ́ẹ̀ ni iná sì ní ohun ẹbọ dà.
Where is the lamb for the burnt offering?
Ọ̀dọ́ àgùntàn tí a ó fi ṣe ẹbọ ńkọ́.
And Abraham answered the boy,
Abraham wá dá ọmọkùnrin yẹn lóhùn.
God himself will provide the
Ó ní
lamb.
Ọlọ́run fúnra rẹ̀ yóò pèsè ọ̀dọ́
And
àgùntàn.
the two of them went on together.
Àwọn méjèèjì sì ń lọ.
And when they got to the place God has instructed them,
Nígbà tí wọ́n sì dé ibi tí Ọlọ́run sọ fún un,
he built the altar,
ó kọ́ pẹpẹ,
he put the woods on it,
ó fi igi síbẹ̀.
and the Bible said he bounded the son Isaac and laid him on the altar.
Bíbélì sì sọ pé ó di ọmọ rẹ̀ Ísáàkì ó sì gbé sórí pẹpẹ yìí.
He laid him upon the
Ó
altar.
gbé sórí pẹpẹ yìí.
And after laying him upon the
Lẹ́yìn
altar,
tó sì gbé sórí pẹpẹ,
he reached out his hand and took the knife.
ó mú ọ̀bẹ,
And he was about to slay the child
ó fẹ́ pa á.
when the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven.
Nígbà tí áńgẹ́lì Ọlọ́run ké pè é
And he
láti
answered
ọ̀run,
again, here I
ó ní
am.
èmi nìyí.
And he said, do not lay your hand on the
Ó
boy.
ní má fọwọ́ rẹ kan ọmọ yẹn,
Do not do anything to him.
má ṣe ohunkóhun fún un.
Now I know that you fear God,
Ní báyìí èmi mọ̀ pé o bẹ̀rù Ọlọ́run
because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son.
nítorí pé ọmọ rẹ kan ṣoṣo ò mú
The
kúrò.
Lord was testifying to the trust that Abraham had in him.
Ọlọ́run jẹ́rìí sí ìgbẹ́kẹ̀lé tí Ábúráhámù
The
ní
Lord
nínú rẹ̀.
himself was testifying to Abraham, being truthful to his request that he has made of him.
Ọlọ́run jẹ́rìí sí ìgbẹ́kẹ̀lé Ábúráhámù wípé ohun tó béèrè lọ́wọ́ rẹ̀ ó fi sílẹ̀.
And from the life of Abraham this morning,
Nínú ìgbé ayé Ábúráhámù lówùúrọ̀
I want to
yìí,
show to us 7 pointers that you trust God.
mo fẹ́ fi àwọn nǹkan méje hàn wá tí ó fi hàn pé a gbẹ́kẹ̀lé Ọlọ́run.
7 pointers that you trust God.
Àwọn méje tí yóò fi hàn pé a gbẹ́kẹ̀lé Ọlọ́run.
7 pointers that you trust God.
Ohun méje tí yóò fi hàn pé a
The
gbẹ́kẹ̀lé
first thing I can
Ọlọ́run.
see in this account is faith.
Ohun àkọ́kọ́ ni ìgbàgbọ́.
Faith.
Ìgbàgbọ́.
Faith in the sovereignty of God.
Ìgbàgbọ́ nínú Ọlọ́run tó ga.
Faith in the sovereignty of God.
Ìgbàgbọ́ nínú Ọlọ́run tó ga.
Abraham believed and had faith that God has sovereignty over all things.
Ábúráhámù gbàgbọ́ pé Ọlọ́run ga ó sì lágbára ju
He has
ẹnikẹ́ni
the
lọ.
power to keep alive and he has the power to kill.
Ó gbà wípé Ọlọ́run lágbára láti dá sí àti láti pa.
He has the power to make grow and he has the power to make wither.
Ó ní agbára láti jẹ́ kí nǹkan dàgbà ó sì ní agbára láti jẹ́ kí nǹkan rọ.
He has the power to open and he has the power to
Ó
close.
ní agbára láti ṣí ó sì ní agbára láti
He has
tì.
the power to give and he has the power to take.
Ó ní agbára láti fi fúnni ó sì ní agbára láti gbà.
Abraham knew that the same God that gave him Isaac has the power to give him another or to deliver the boy.
Ábúráhámù mọ̀ pé Ọlọ́run tó fún òun ní ọmọ yìí ó ní agbára láti gbà á padà tàbí láti gbà á là.
And that was one of the reasons why Abraham went through the process of learning before Isaac came.
ìdí nìyí tí Ábúráhámù fi la àwọn ìgbésẹ̀ kíkọ́ kọjá kó tó di pé Ísákì dé.
The reason why when God showed him that your children shall be as many as the stars, he believed and it was counted to him as righteousness.
nígbà tí Ọlọ́run sọ fún wípé àwọn irú ọmọ rẹ̀ yóò dàbí iyanrìn etí òkun tàbí bí ìràwọ̀ ojú ọ̀run, ó gbàgbọ́ a sì kà á kún
If you are going to be counted as having trust in God,
tí a ó bá kà ọ́ kún ẹni tó gbẹ́kẹ̀lé Ọlọ́run,
then you must have faith in his sovereignty.
o gbọ́dọ̀ ní ìgbàgbọ́ nínú gíga rẹ̀.
Because if you refuse to give what he's requesting of you, he has the power to take and you cannot question it.
tí o bá kọ̀ láti fún un ní nǹkan tó béèrè lọ́wọ́ rẹ, ó ní agbára láti gbà á tí ò sí nǹkan tó fẹ́ ṣe.
I've seen many servants of God who ran into trouble with God because they refused to heed his call to the ministry.
mo ti rí àwọn ìránṣẹ́ Ọlọ́run èyí tó wọ wàhálà nítorí pé wọ́n kọ̀ láti gba ìpè Ọlọ́run.
They lost their job.
wọ́n pàdánù iṣẹ́
Even
wọn.
some lost their children before they finally obeyed the
a rí
instruction.
àwọn tó pàdánù ọmọ kó tó di pé wọ́n wá gbọ́ ìpè tàbí wọ́n gba ìpè náà.
Why wait until you suffer loss before you yield to trust him?
kí ló dé tí ó fi wá dé ìpele pé ó máa pàdánù kó o tó gbọ́ tàbí gba ìpè rẹ̀.
The second pointer that you trust God
ohun kejì
is when you say no to common sense.
ó ní ìgbà tí o bá sọ pé rárá sí àwọn nǹkan tí o rò pé ó yẹ kó rí bẹ́ẹ̀.
When you say no to common sense.
nígbà tó bá sọ pé rárá sí àwọn nǹkan tó rò bó yẹ kó rí bẹ́ẹ̀.
When you don't subject God's instruction to common sense.
nígbà tí o bá fi agbára Ọlọ́run wé ohun tó kàn ń wá tó yẹ
When
kó rí bẹ́ẹ̀
God is
lásán.
saying do this.
tí Ọlọ́run sọ pé ṣe eléyìí.
When God is saying give this.
Ọlọ́run sọ pé fi eléyìí
And you
fún mi.
don't subject it to your common sense.
tí o sì wá fi sí abẹ́ ìdarí pé bó ṣe yẹ kó rí
It's a
nìyí.
pointer that you trust God.
ó jẹ́ àmì pé o
When
gbẹ́kẹ̀lé
God said
Ọlọ́run.
to Abraham, take your only son and sacrifice.
nígbà tí Ọlọ́run sọ fún Ábúráhámù pé kó mú ọmọ rẹ̀ kan lójú kó fi
Abraham
rúbọ.
did not reduce it to the realm of his common sense.
Ábúráhámù ò gbé ọ̀rọ̀ Ọlọ́run sí abẹ́ ìmọ̀ rẹ̀ pé bó ṣe yẹ kó rí
He did
nìyí.
not rationalize it.
kò máa rò ó
To say, God, what do you mean?
pé Ọlọ́run kí ló
To say, let me fast for 7 days. Maybe God will change his mind.
pé jẹ́ kí n gbààwẹ̀ ọjọ́ méje bóyá Ọlọ́run á yí ọkàn rẹ̀
Let
padà.
me fast for 7. Let me fast for 7 days. Maybe God would say, take Ishmael instead of Isaac.
jẹ́ n gbààwẹ̀ ọjọ́ méje bóyá Ọlọ́run á sọ pé kí n mú Ismaili dípò
Many of us,
Ísákì.
when God comes to us, we offer him alternative instead of the original that is asking of us.
nígbà tí Ọlọ́run bá sọ nǹkan kan fún ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ wa kí a fi fún òun, a máa ń fẹ́ yọ̀ǹda èyí tó jẹ́ àdàmọ̀dì yàtọ̀ sí tó béèrè
I'm
lójúlówó.
sure there are some of us who did not believe that this project will be done.
mo mọ̀ wípé ó ní àwa tí a ó gbàgbọ́ pé
That we did not believe.
tí a gbàgbọ́ pé iṣẹ́ yìí yóò di ṣíṣe.
You're wondering 18 million by April. How is that possible?
pé 18 million báwo ló ṣe lè ṣeé ṣe.
When we
títí
subject
oṣù
it to
kẹrin.
common sense, it is not possible.
tá a bá fi wé pé bó ṣe yẹ kó rí nìyí kò lè ṣeé ṣe.
But when you flow with God in his instruction, it is possible.
ṣùgbọ́n tí a bá ń bá Ọlọ́run rìn nínú ìtọ́ni rẹ̀ ó ṣeé ṣe.
And these things are meant to help our faith.
àwọn nǹkan wọ̀nyí ni ó yẹ kó ran ìgbàgbọ́ wa
Not
lọ́wọ́.
only the pastor's faith,
kì í ṣe ìgbàgbọ́ olùṣọ́ àgùntàn
but also
nìkan
your faith.
ṣùgbọ́n ìgbàgbọ́
If
tìrẹ
you see
náà.
God doing things, they are meant to help your faith.
tí o bá rí Ọlọ́run tó ń ṣe àwọn nǹkan kan ó fẹ́ ran ìgbàgbọ́ rẹ lọ́wọ́
If we
ni.
are telling God 6 months,
tá a bá sọ fún Ọlọ́run pé oṣù mẹ́fà
and later we said 4 months,
tó yá tí a sọ pé oṣù mẹ́rin
and God came in 2 months,
tí Ọlọ́run sì wá ní oṣù méjì.
it's supposed to help build us up in faith that is able to do all things
Ó
at
yẹ-
any time.
ó yẹ kó lè ru ìgbàgbọ́ wa sókè wípé Ọlọ́run lè ṣe ohunkóhun nígbà tó bá wù ú.
Don't subject God's instruction to common sense.
má máa gbé ohun tí ó jẹ́ ìtọ́ni Ọlọ́run sí abẹ́ bó ṣe yẹ kó rí
The third
nìyí.
pointer that you trust in God
ìkẹta tí ó fi hàn pé o gbẹ́kẹ̀lé Ọlọ́run
is obedience.
ó ní ìgbọràn.
Obedience.
ìgbọràn.
Abraham promptly responded to God's instruction.
Ábúráhámù ó dáhùn sí ìpè Ọlọ́run lọ́gán.
He promptly responded to God's instruction.
ó dáhùn sí ìpè Ọlọ́run
The
lọ́gán.
Bible said the following day,
Bíbélì sọ pé ní ọjọ́ kejì
at the break of
tí
day,
ilẹ̀ ti mọ́
early the next morning,
ní òwúrọ̀ kùtùkùtù
he
ọjọ́
did not
kejì
call a council meeting.
kò pe ìpàdé
He did
àjọ
not call a family
kò
meeting.
pe ìpàdé ẹbí
He did not call a meeting of the extended family.
kò pe ìpàdé mọ̀lẹ́bí
But promptly he responded in obedience to God.
ṣùgbọ́n lọ́gán ló dìde sí ìtọ́ni
He
Ọlọ́run
responded to what God has instructed
ó
him.
dáhùn sí ohun tí Ọlọ́run sọ fún
And
un
what was the instruction?
kí sì ni ohun tí Ọlọ́run sọ
Take
fún
your
un
only son that you love
pé mú ọmọ rẹ kan ṣoṣo tó o fẹ́ràn
and go to a place I will show to you
kó o sì lọ sí ibi tí èmi ò fi hàn ọ́
and offer him as a burnt
kó o
offering
sì
to
fi
me.
rú ẹbọ sísun níbẹ̀.
And Abraham said, yes, sir.
Abrahamu sì sọ pé bẹ́ẹ̀ ni Olúwa.
And the following day he set out for the
Ní ọjọ́
sacrifice.
kejì ó tẹ̀síwájú láti rú ẹbọ náà
In obedience.
ní ìgbọràn.
Are you obedient to God's instruction?
Ǹjẹ́ ìwọ náà ń gbọ́ràn sí ìtọ́ni Ọlọ́run bí?
Your level of obedience is directly proportional to your level of trust in God.
Ìpele ìgbọràn rẹ òun ni ìpele ìgbẹ́kẹ̀lé
Your
rẹ sí
level of
Ọlọ́run.
obedience to God is directly proportional to your trust in God.
Ìpele ìgbọràn rẹ ó ṣe déédéé ìgbàgbọ́ rẹ sí Ọlọ́run.
Abraham obeyed God without questioning him.
Abrahamu gbọ́ràn sí Ọlọ́run láì máa bí léèrè.
Why should God ask me for his son?
Láì máa béèrè pé kí ló dé tí Ọlọ́run ó béèrè ọmọ.
When he knew he was going to kill this son, why did he give me in the first
Nígbà tó
place?
mọ̀ pé òun máa pa ọmọ yìí ni kí ló dé tó kúkú fi fún mi.
Abraham did not question God.
Abrahamu máa béèrè lọ́wọ́
He
Ọlọ́run.
obeyed immediately.
Ó gbọ́ràn lẹ́sẹ̀kẹsẹ̀.
The fourth pointer that you trust God
Àmì kẹrin tí ó fi hàn pé o gbẹ́kẹ̀lé Ọlọ́run
is mind made up.
òun ni pípinnu,
Mind made up.
ṣíṣèpinnu.
He already made up his mind.
Ó ti ṣèpinnu yẹn.
There was nothing that could change his
Kò
mind.
sí ohunkóhun tó lè yí lọ́kàn padà.
And Abraham did not change his mind.
Abrahamu kò yí ọkàn padà.
And you know it would have been an easy assignment.
A sì wò pé ohun tí ìbá rọrùn ni.
If God has allowed him to offer this boy on the family altar, maybe in their compound.
Pé kó ṣe ẹbọ sísun yẹn nínú olórí pẹpẹ wọn nínú ìdílé.
But God had him to go to a place that took him 3 days.
Ọlọ́run ní kó lọ sí ibi tí ó gbà ní ìrìn ọjọ́
3
mẹ́ta.
days to think about it.
Ọjọ́ mẹ́ta kó fi lè ronú sí.
3 days to reflect.
Ọjọ́ mẹ́ta kó fi lè
3
ronú.
days to doubt.
Ní ọjọ́ mẹ́ta kó fi lè
3
ṣiyèméjì.
days to be confused.
Ní ọjọ́ mẹ́ta kọ́kàn rẹ̀ fi lè pòrúurú.
3 days to say, am I foolish?
Lọ́jọ́ mẹ́ta kó fi lè rò pé ṣé mo gọ̀ ni.
3 days to say that, what will people say?
Àárín ọjọ́ mẹ́ta kó fi sọ pé kí làwọn èèyàn máa wí.
3 days to think about it. When I get back home, what will I tell Sarah?
Ọjọ́ mẹ́ta kó fi ronú sí pé tí n bá padà délé kí ni kí n sọ fún aya mi.
He had to go on a 3 days journey.
Ó nílò láti rìnrìn àjò ọjọ́ mẹ́ta.
But Abraham already made up his mind.
Ṣùgbọ́n Abrahamu ti pinnu lọ́kàn rẹ̀.
Abraham already decided, like the 3 Hebrews in the book of Daniel,
Abrahamu ti pinnu gẹ́gẹ́ bí àwọn Hébérù mẹ́ta nínú ìwé Dáníẹ́lì.
that our God is able to save us.
Pé Ọlọ́run wá lè gbà wá.
And even if he does not save
Tí ò bá
us,
tiẹ̀ wá gbà wá.
yet will not bow down to the graven image.
Ṣùgbọ́n síbẹ̀ àwa ò ní foríbalẹ̀ fún ère gbígbẹ́.
Our God is able to save us.
Ọlọ́run wá lè gbà wá.
That is the level of faith of everybody. General faith is able to save us.
Gbà ohun tó jẹ́ ìpele ìgbàgbọ́ wa lákòópọ̀ nìyí.
But they did not stay at the level of general faith.
Ṣùgbọ́n àwọn wọ̀nyí kò dúró ní ìpele
They
ìgbàgbọ́.
moved to the level of, even if he does not save us,
Wọ́n lọ sí ìpele tí kò bá tilẹ̀ gbà wá.
the level of personal decision taking.
Ìpele kí ènìyàn ṣèpinnu ẹlẹ́yọ̀kan fúnra rẹ̀.
Even if he does not save us,
Pé tí ò bá tiẹ̀ gbà wá.
we will yet not bow.
Síbẹ̀ a ò ní foríbalẹ̀.
Abraham made up his mind.
Abrahamu pinnu lọ́kàn rẹ̀.
Though he had 3 days to change his mind.
Olùtọ́ ó ní ọjọ́ mẹ́ta láti fi ronú sí i.
Can you trust God to that level?
Ǹjẹ́ ìwọ náà lè gbẹ́kẹ̀lé Ọlọ́run dé ìpele yìí?
That your mind is made up.
Pé o ti pinnu.
No matter what men say,
Pé ohun yòówù tí ènìyàn ìbá sọ.
you will not turn away from it.
O ò ní yí padà kúrò níbẹ̀.
You will trust him.
Ó gbẹ́kẹ̀lé.
Even when men call you foolish,
Nígbà tí àwọn èèyàn bá tiẹ̀ pè ọ́ ní òmùgọ̀.
your mind is made up.
Síbẹ̀ ọkàn rẹ ti pinnu.
The fourth pointer that you trust God.
Àmì karùn-ún wípé.
The fifth pointer that you trust God
Àmì karùn-ún wípé o gbẹ́kẹ̀lé Ọlọ́run.
is to remove distractions.
Òun ni láti mú ohunkóhun tó lè di ọ lọ́wọ́ kúrò.
To remove
Láti
distractions.
mú ohunkóhun tó lè mú ọ
The
di ọ
Bible said
lọ́wọ́
after
kúrò.
they traveled for 3 days,
Bíbélì sọ pé lẹ́yìn ìgbà tí wọ́n rìnrìn
and
àjò ọjọ́
Abraham saw
mẹ́ta
where God had shown him ahead,
tó sì ti rí ibi tí Ọlọ́run fi hàn níwájú,
he said to his servant, stay here with the donkey.
ó wá sọ fún àwọn ìránṣẹ́ rẹ̀ pé ẹ dúró síbí pẹ̀lú àwọn kẹ́tẹ́kẹ́tẹ́.
Stay here with the donkey.
Ẹ dúró síbí pẹ̀lú àwọn kẹ́tẹ́kẹ́tẹ́.
The servants would have been a distraction if he allowed them to follow him through in the journey.
Àwọn ìránṣẹ́ rẹ̀ wọn ìbá jẹ́ ìdíwọ́ fún ká ní ó gbà wọ́n láyè kan tẹ̀lé.
They would have told him, Oga, what's wrong?
Wọ́n máa bí léèrè pé kí ló dé.
Maybe they would have even held him and say, Isaac, run away, run away,
Bóyá
run
àwọn
away.
ìbá tiẹ̀ dìímú tí wọ́n á sọ pé kí Ísáàkì sá àsálà fún ẹ̀mí rẹ̀.
But Abraham made sure he set aside distraction from the journey.
Ṣùgbọ́n Ábúráhámù mú gbogbo ìdíwọ́ kúrò ní ọ̀nà rẹ̀.
I don't know the type of friends you have around you.
Mi ò mọrú àwọn ọ̀rẹ́ tí wọ́n náà ní tó yí ọ ká.
Are they friends that will distract you?
Ǹjẹ́ wọ́n jẹ́ àwọn ọ̀rẹ́ tí wọ́n lè dí ọ lọ́wọ́?
That will show you 1,001 reasons why you should not obey God.
Tí wọ́n fi ẹgbẹ̀rún kan àti ẹyọ kan àwọn ìdí tí ò fi gbọ́dọ̀ gbọ́ràn sí
That
Ọlọ́run
will show you
lẹ́nu.
1,001 reasons why you should not give to
Tí
God.
wọ́n fi fún ọ ní oríṣiríṣi ìdí tí ò fi gbọ́dọ̀ fi fún Ọlọ́run.
That will tell you that this God is not wicked
Pé
now.
Ọlọ́run wa yìí kì í ṣe èèyàn búburú.
Tell you this God is not wicked.
Ọlọ́run wa ò burú.
How will he say give your 1 month salary?
Kí ló dé tí ó fi sọ pé kó o fi odidi owó oṣù kan
Does he not know you are going to eat?
Ṣé kò mọ̀ pé o máa jẹun ni?
Does he not know you are going to pay your school
Ṣé
fees?
kò mọ̀ pé o máa sanwó iléèwé ni?
He removed those distractions.
Ó mú gbogbo àwọn ìdíwọ́ yìí kúrò.
And that was why he did not even tell them.
Ìdí nìyí tí ò tiẹ̀ fi sọ fún wọn rárá.
Many of us, because we want those who would support our subtle idea, we tell them so that they can discourage us.
Àwa kan wà tó jẹ́ wípé a fẹ́ àwọn tó jẹ́ pé wọ́n á lè darapọ̀ mọ́ wa láti bá a ronú lórí nǹkan tá a fẹ́ ṣe, a wá máa sọ fún
We
wọn.
tell them so that we can have people on our side to justify why we are not trusting God.
A ó sọ fún àwọn yẹn kí káwọn náà lè rí ìdí láti dá wa láre ìdí tí a ò fi gbọ́dọ̀ gbẹ́kẹ̀lé Ọlọ́run.
They will tell you God knows that things are hard now. Why must you pay your tithes?
Pé àwọn Ọlọ́run gan mọ̀ pé nǹkan lè ń sìn, kí ló dé tó fi fẹ́ sanwó ìdámẹ́wàá rẹ?
Why should pastor say we want to roof at a time when he knows that dollar rate has gone up, everything has skyrocketed?
Ní kí ló dé tí olùṣọ́àgùn tó fi sọ pé ká wá kan ilé nígbà tó mọ̀ wípé gbogbo owó nǹkan ti wọ́n, dọ́là ti gbẹnu sókè?
Abraham removed distractions.
Ábúráhámù mú gbogbo ìdíwọ́ kúrò.
If you are going to learn to trust God when he's placing a demand on you, you must learn to remove distractions.
Tí o bá kọ́ láti gbẹ́kẹ̀lé Ọlọ́run nígbà tó ń béèrè nǹkan kan lọ́wọ́ rẹ, o gbọ́dọ̀ mú gbogbo ìdíwọ́ kúrò.
Number 6,
Ìkẹfà,
you must deal with unbelief.
o gbọ́dọ̀ mú ohun gbogbo tí ṣe àìgbàgbọ́ kúrò.
You must deal with
O
unbelief.
gbọ́dọ̀ mú àìgbàgbọ́ kúrò.
You must deal with
O
unbelief.
gbọ́dọ̀ mú àìgbàgbọ́ kúrò.
In verse 8,
Ní ẹsẹ̀ ìkẹjọ
from verse 7,
láti ẹsẹ̀
Isaac
ìkeje.
spoke up and said to his father Abraham, Father, yes, my son. Abraham replied, the fire and wood are here. Isaac said, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the two of them went on together. If you were Abraham that the son asked you,
Tó bá jẹ́ pé ìwọ ni Ábúráhámù tí ọmọ sì bí ọ́ léèrè béèrè yìí,
is it not at that point that you will break down and begin to cry?
ṣé gbà ẹ̀kọ́ ni a ó wá bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní sunkún?
You know, at that point, you begin to say, you want mommy? Kò yé mi náà.
We begin to mourn and say we don't even know.
But Abraham at that point dealt with unbelief.
Ṣùgbọ́n ní àkókò yìí, Ábúráhámù mú àìgbàgbọ́ kúrò.
The boy was asking for the sacrifice.
Ọmọ ń béèrè fún ohun ẹbọ.
And God was asking for a sacrifice.
Ọlọ́run náà ń béèrè fún ohun ẹbọ.
So Abraham did not have the answer.
Ábúráhámù ò ní ìdáhùn.
And all what he did was to say, son, God himself will provide the
Ohun tó kàn
sacrifice.
sọ fún náà ni pé Ọlọ́run fúnra rẹ̀ yóò pèsè.
When men will question what you are doing,
Nígbà tí àwọn ènìyàn ò bá bi ọ́ léèrè nípa nǹkan tó ń ṣe,
will you also say, like Abraham said, God will provide?
ǹjẹ́ ìwọ náà yóò lè dá wọn lóhùn wípé Ọlọ́run yóò pèsè bí
When
Ábúráhámù
they
ti dáhùn?
ask you, after giving this to God, how would you sort out this problem?
pé nígbà tó bá fi eléyìí fún Ọlọ́run báwo ló ṣe fẹ́ yanjú ìṣòro yìí.
When you go and borrow to give God in your church, how do you want to take care of your family?
nígbà tó bá lọ yáwó torí pé o fẹ́ fi sílẹ̀ nínú ìjọ báwo ló ṣe fẹ́ tọ́jú ẹbí rẹ.
And you know, it looked very funny when I was telling us that this year, that is what God is saying, we should all go and borrow and give to this work.
ó dàbí ẹni tó panilẹ́rìn nígbà tí mò ń sọ wípé ká lọ yá ká sì wá fi fún Ọlọ́run.
Isaac also asked Abraham,
Ísákì béèrè lọ́wọ́ Ábúráhámù.
and all he could say is God himself will provide.
ohun tí Ábúráhámù fi dáhùn náà ni pé Ọlọ́run yóò pèsè.
The last pointer that you trust God
àmì tó gbẹ̀yìn wípé o gbẹ́kẹ̀lé Ọlọ́run.
is to take action.
òun ni láti gbé ìgbésẹ̀.
Is to take action.
òun ni láti gbé ìgbésẹ̀.
It is one thing to start the process.
ọ̀tọ̀ ni kí ènìyàn bẹ̀rẹ̀ ìrìn àjò.
It is another thing to complete it.
ọ̀tọ̀ sì ni kí ènìyàn parí rẹ̀.
It is one thing that Abraham left home.
ohun kan ni pé Ábúráhámù kúrò ní ilé.
It is another thing that Abraham left the servant behind.
ohun mìíràn ni pé Ábúráhámù fi àwọn ìránṣẹ́ sílẹ̀
It is
níbi kan.
another thing for Abraham to complete the process.
ìpele mìíràn sì ni pé kí Ábúráhámù parí iṣẹ́ tó ti
If you are
bẹ̀rẹ̀.
going to prove that you trust God,
tí ó bá fi hàn wípé o fẹ́ràn o
when he's
gbẹ́kẹ̀lé
placing
Ọlọ́run.
a demand on you to give what he has given to you,
nígbà tó bá ń béèrè lọ́wọ́ rẹ pé kó o fi ohun tóun ti fi fún ọ fún òun padà.
you must take action,
o gbọ́dọ̀ gbé ìgbésẹ̀.
not only with the words of mouth.
kì í ṣe nípa ẹnu nìkan.
The action is letting go of that which is dearest to you.
ohun tí a sì ń sọ nípa gbígbégbèsè yìí o ní láti fi ohun tí o rí pé ó ṣọ̀wọ́n sí ẹ
The
jùlọ sílẹ̀.
action is letting go and sacrificing that which is precious to you.
gbígbé ìgbésẹ̀ o ní láti fi ohun tí tó ṣọ̀wọ́n sí ọ jùlọ
It
sílẹ̀
is
fún
giving
Ọlọ́run.
it up to God.
fífi fún Ọlọ́run.
And God will always bring us to this point of asking us for that which is dearest to us.
Ọlọ́run yóò sì dé ìpele yẹn nínú ayé wa tí ó béèrè ohun tó ṣọ̀wọ́n sí wa jùlọ lọ́wọ́ wa.
If you have never gotten to that point, beloved, you are still at the level of trusting God for only what you want Him to give you.
ní tí a ò bá tí ì dé irú ìpele yìí a jẹ́ pé a wà ní ìpele wípé à ń gbẹ́kẹ̀lé Ọlọ́run fún ohun tí ó lè fún wa.
And every child of God must leave the level of trusting God for good things alone.
gbogbo ọmọ Ọlọ́run ló sì gbọ́dọ̀ kúrò ní ìpele wípé a gbẹ́kẹ̀lé Ọlọ́run fún ohun tó dára nìkan.
We must move to that level of God testing us to trust Him in giving Him back what He has given to us.
a gbọ́dọ̀ gbé ìpele wípé a ó gbẹ́kẹ̀lé láti lè fi fún ohun tó ti fi fún wa padà.
If you don't get to this level, you remain a babe.
tí o bá tí ì dé ìpele yìí ọmọ ọwọ́ ló sì jẹ́.
You must move from the level of drinking milk to the level of cracking bones.
a gbọ́dọ̀ kúrò ní ìpele mímu wàrà dé ìpele tí a ti ń fọ́ egungun.
You must move from the level of asking God for money to the level of giving it back to God.
a gbọ́dọ̀ kúrò ní ìpele pé à ń béèrè owó lọ́wọ́ Ọlọ́run kó fi fún wa ṣùgbọ́n ká dé ìpele pé à ń fi fún Ọlọ́run padà.
It is until you get to the level of trusting God to empty yourself back to Him before He can give Himself fully to you.
ó dìgbà tá a bá dé ìpele wípé a lè fi ohun gbogbo tá a ní fún Ọlọ́run kí a di òfìfo nígbà náà ni Ọlọ́run tó lè fún wa ní ara rẹ̀ lẹ́kùnrẹ́rẹ́.
You must get to that level of He makes a demand on what you have in your account and you are not bothered about emptying it for Him.
nígbà tí a bá dé ìpele wípé Ọlọ́run béèrè ohun gbogbo tó wà nínú àpò wa gẹ́gẹ́ bí ilé ìfowópamọ́ tá a sì ṣetán láti jọ̀wọ́ rẹ̀.
When He places a demand on your business, on your job, until you get to that level of willing to return it back to Him, you don't trust Him.
nígbà tá a bá dé ìpele pé ó tilẹ̀ béèrè fún iṣẹ́ wa tá a sì lè fi padà fún.
Many of us who have shops, we cannot close it 6 o'clock on Wednesday or before 5 o'clock or 5:30 to come for Bible study. You have not grown to that level of giving it back to God.
ọ̀pọ̀ nínú wa ni a ní ilé ìtajà wa tó jẹ́ pé a ò lè ti ṣọ́ọ̀bù wa níbi aago 5:00 ká sì wá sí ẹ̀kọ́ Bíbélì a ò tí ì dé ìpele pé a gbẹ́kẹ̀lé Ọlọ́run
You have
nípa
not
fífi
gotten to
fún
the
un.
point that He have also asked you, give to me, that's your business, that business you love so much, offer it to me on the
a
altar.
ò tí ì dé ìpele wípé okòwò wa tí a fẹ́ràn jùlọ yẹn ó fẹ́ kí a fi rúbọ sí òun lórí pẹpẹ.
that the wealth he has given to you, you give it back to him in return.
wípé ọrọ̀ tí ó ti fi fún wa àti ọlá yẹn kí a fi fún òun padà.
Have you gotten to the point that you offer your family to the Lord in return?
ṣé àti ìdè ìpele wípé a fi ẹbí wa sílẹ̀ fún gẹ́gẹ́ bí ẹbọ
That you
sísun.
offer your fame to the Lord in return?
pé ohun tó jẹ́ ohun tá a níbi gbajúmọ̀ pé a fi sílẹ̀ fún Ọlọ́run.
What the Lord asked of Abraham was Isaac. What the Lord asked of Abraham was Isaac.
ohun tí Ọlọ́run béèrè lọ́wọ́ Abrahamu ní Ísákì.
What is your own Isaac that God is asking you to sacrifice?
kí ni Ísákì tí Ọlọ́run béèrè lọ́wọ́ rẹ láti fi rúbọ?
Abraham was able to pass this level.
Abrahamu ó lè yege nínú ìpele yìí.
Beloved, you must also grow beyond this level.
ìwọ náà gbọ́dọ̀ dàgbà rékọjá ìpele yìí.
You must grow beyond this
o
level.
gbọ́dọ̀ dàgbà rékọjá
You
ìpele
must
yìí.
grow to the level that your giving to God is not because it's an obligation, but because it is what you are willing to do.
a gbọ́dọ̀ dàgbà dé ìpele pé ohun tí a fi fún Ọlọ́run kì í ṣe nítorí pé ó pọn dandan pé ojúṣe ṣùgbọ́n a fẹ́ láti ṣe.
You must get to that level
o gbọ́dọ̀ dé
that
ìpele
you are
yẹn
giving it back because you love God.
pé òun fi fún Ọlọ́run padà nítorí pé o nífẹ̀ẹ́
Abraham
rẹ̀.
proved that he trusts God by giving up Isaac.
Abrahamu fi hàn wípé òun gbẹ́kẹ̀lé Ọlọ́run nípa fífi Ísákì sílẹ̀.
And how did God respond to Abraham's trust?
báwo ni Ọlọ́run ṣe wá dáhùn sí ìgbẹ́kẹ̀lé Ọlọ́run
How did
Abrahamu?
God respond to
báwo
Abraham's
ni Ọlọ́run
trust?
ṣe dáhùn sí ìgbẹ́kẹ̀lé Abrahamu
How
sí?
did God respond to Abraham's trust?
báwo ni Ọlọ́run ṣe dáhùn sí ìgbẹ́kẹ̀lé Abrahamu sí?
You know, most times I tell us how we should respond, but now I want to show you how did God respond to Abraham's
ní
trust.
ọ̀pọ̀ ìgbà mo máa ń sọ ohun tó yẹ kó jẹ́ ìdáhùn wa sí Ọlọ́run ṣùgbọ́n ní báyìí mo fẹ́ sọ ohun tó jẹ́ ìdáhùn Ọlọ́run
Number
sí
one.
Abrahamu. Àkọ́kọ́,
God is pleased with Abraham.
inú Ọlọ́run dùn sí
Or let's
Abrahamu.
put it this way. God's response to anyone that trusts him.
ìdáhùn Ọlọ́run sí ẹnikẹ́ni tó bá gbẹ́kẹ̀lé.
God is pleased with you.
inú Ọlọ́run dùn sí ọ.
God was pleased with
inú
Abraham.
Ọlọ́run dùn sí Abrahamu.
God was pleased with
inú
Abraham.
Ọlọ́run dùn sí
You
Abrahamu.
know, God allowed Abraham to get to the last point before he asked him to stop.
Ọlọ́run ó jẹ́ kí Abrahamu dé ìpele tó gbẹ̀yìn kó tó sọ fún pé
He
kó
already
dáwọ́
took the
dúró.
knife to slay the boy before he said, stop, don't touch the
ó
boy.
ti mú ọ̀bẹ ó sì fẹ́ dúnbú ọmọ rẹ̀ kó tó di pé Ọlọ́run sọ
And
fún
so
pé kó dáwọ́
God was
dúró.
pleased with Abraham.
inú Ọlọ́run dùn sí Abrahamu.
He says, now I know that you fear God
ó ní báyìí èmi mọ̀ pé ìwọ bẹ̀rù Olúwa
because you have not withheld from me your son, your only
nítorí
son.
pé ìwọ ò dá ọmọ rẹ kan ṣoṣo dúró.
If God have said, Abraham, give me your wealth and take Isaac, Abraham would not have questioned God at all.
tó bá yẹ pé Ọlọ́run sọ pé fún mi ní gbogbo ọrọ̀ rẹ tí kìí ṣe Ísákì Abrahamu ìbá máa bá
And
Ọlọ́run
so
rojọ́.
God is pleased with anyone who trusts him.
inú Ọlọ́run máa ń dùn sí ẹnikẹ́ni tó bá
Number
gbẹ́kẹ̀lé.
two.
Ìkejì,
God sees you as dependable.
Ọlọ́run rí ẹ bí ẹni tó ṣe é gbẹ́kẹ̀lé.
God sees anyone that trusts him as dependable.
ẹni tó bá gbẹ́kẹ̀lé Ọlọ́run máa ń rí irú ẹni bí ẹni tó ṣe é gbára lé.
God could depend on Abraham.
Ọlọ́run lè gbára lé
And you
Abrahamu.
know that it was not just today that God already testified about Abraham.
a sì mọ̀ wípé kì í ṣe òní nìkan ni Ọlọ́run ti
Even
jẹ́rìí sí
before God
Abrahamu.
gave Abraham Isaac, God already testified that Abraham was dependable.
kó tó di pé Ọlọ́run fún Abrahamu ní Ísákì Ọlọ́run ti jẹ́rìí rẹ̀ pé ó ṣe é gbára lé.
God said, will I do such a thing without telling my friend Abraham?
ó ní ǹjẹ́ èmi ò wá ṣe nǹkan yìí láì sọ fún ọ̀rẹ́ mi Abrahamu.
That was when he wanted to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah.
nígbà tó fẹ́ pa Sódómù Gòmórà run.
He said, because I know he will teach his children my ways.
nítorí pé mo mọ̀ pé yóò kọ́ àwọn ọmọ rẹ̀ ní ọ̀nà
At that
mi.
time, Abraham did not have any child.
ní àkókò yìí Abrahamu kò ní
And
ọmọ.
God was already saying, I know he will teach his children my
Ọlọ́run sì ń
ways.
sọ wípé èmi mọ̀ pé yóò kọ́ àwọn ọmọ rẹ̀ ní ọ̀nà mi.
God's response to trust is that he sees you as dependable.
ohun tó máa ń jẹ́ ìdáhùn Ọlọ́run sí ìgbẹ́kẹ̀lé nínú rẹ̀ ni pé yóò rí ọbẹ̀ ẹni tó ṣe é gbára lé.
So that it can be that he can depend on when it comes to his resources.
pé Ọlọ́run lè gbára lé ọ nígbà tó bá kan ohun ìní rẹ.
God has not invested his resources in you because you are not dependable.
Ọlọ́run ò fi ìdókòwò rẹ̀ sínú nínú rẹ nítorí pé ò ṣe é gbára lé.
God is seeing some of us as the prodigal child that will squander his resources. That is why he has not given you his resources.
Ọlọ́run rí ọ̀pọ̀ wa gẹ́gẹ́ bí ọmọ onínàkúnà tí ó bà ná ohun tí ó bá fún wa. Ìdí nìyí tí
God
ò
is
fi
seeing
fi
some
ohun
of
èlò
us
rẹ̀ fún wa.
as misers, being greedy, being covetous, and he has withheld his resources from us.
Ọlọ́run rí ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ wa gẹ́gẹ́ bí ahun, gẹ́gẹ́ bí olójúkòkòrò.